Welcome back everybody. In the last video we created the shader class and the shader loader class, and in this episode we're actually going to create the logger class. We were going to create the texture loader and the texture class, however we're going to do the logger first before we get too far ahead with different logging, different errors. I don't want it to go through and change them all back later. So we're going to do that now, and we're going to treat the logger class the same way we've treated everything. We're going to actually just create a new project for that. So go over to your solution and we're going to add a new project. And that's just an empty C++ project. And I'll just call this Scion logger. And once the logger is created, we're going to want to do the same thing we always do. Well, we have been doing. We don't have to always do this. And we're going to change this to a static library. Static. And we're going to change our C++ standard to C++ 20. You can start using, if you're using Visual Studio, you can start using the features from the latest. That'll give you some cool stuff from C++ 23. However, we're just going to stick with 20 for now. And then go apply. Okay. And let's make some folders. We'll just make a new folder. Call the folder logger. And then just start with our logger header file. So header file, logger.h. Cool. Alright, so we're going to need to include a few things in our logger. So we're going to include string view. We'll also need source location. We're going to need a vector, and we're going to need cast_cert. Now I did a logger before in my C++ text RPG series. This one's going to be similar, however, I've changed it now to take a variable amount of arguments, so it's going to be a variadic template for our log, error, and warning functions. We'll get to that in a minute. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a namespace, and I'm just going to call this namespace Scion logger. You can name it whatever you like. And before we get to the logger class, we're going to need two structs, the log entry struct and the log time struct. Actually, with the log time struct, we'll make that a private struct of the logger. So let's start with the log entry. That'll just be struct. Let's give this a little space here. Struct log entry. And log entry is we need a way to differentiate the type of log that it is. So we're going to need an enum class log type, and we're going to have an info, we're going to have a warning, we're going to have an error or none. Whoops. And then we're going to have a member for the log type, and that'll just be the type, and by default it'll just be info. And then we're going to have a string, and that's going to be the log, and it'll just be empty. The reason why we want to have a log entry class is because if we want to put the logs into a vector to display in a GUI logger somewhere rather than just using the console. Okay, so now we can start our logger class. We're going to make the logger class into a singleton because we only ever need one logger. So class logger, we're going to have some private variables, and we're going to have some public. And right off the hop, since we're creating a singleton, we're going to make the constructor private, and we're also going to make it default and delete the copy constructor and assignment operator. So we'll do that now. So we'll just go logger is equal to default, and destructor is also going to be equal to default. Whoops. And we're going to have the logger. Whoops, let's close that. Const logger reference delete. And then logger reference operator const logger reference equals delete. I think we want these to be public. All right, so this will make it non-copyable. Make the logger non-copyable. And we're going to have some variables. So for the member variables, we're going to need a vector for log entries and some Boolean initializers. You don't have to use the initializers, but I'm going to do that. We'll go std vector log entry of m log entries. And then we're going to have a bool mb log added. That'll be false. mb initialized. I don't know if I spelled that right, but that's fine. False. And then mb console log. This is, do we want to actually log it to the console? And this will by default be true. And mb retain logs. Now if we do, this will also be true by default, but if we don't want to retain, this means, are we going to be putting these logs into this vector? If we're not retaining the logs, then this vector will just be empty. And then we also need to have the log time struct. This is just going to be a private struct for us. The log time will be a simple struct that'll hold the day, day number, month, year, and time as a string in as the constructor. So you go struct log time. That's just a private because I want to be able to control the string that goes into the constructor here. String day, day number, month, year, and time. Cool. And then we'll have our log time constructor, and that's just a const. That's the string reference, and that's the date going in. The date comes in a certain order, so we need to parse the string that's going in to get the correct substrings for these particular days, numbers, months, etc. All right. So after that, we can actually have another function called get the current date time for the log, and that's just going to return a string. That's string current date time, or you can just say date time. Again, so since this is a singleton, we need to have a way to get the instance. So we'll put the instance up here, and that'll just be a static logger reference, and we'll just say get instance. All right. So the log, the error, and the warn functions are all going to be variadic templates. These will take a string view parameter and parameter pack arguments. We will go template type name args, and that'll just be void log const std string, and that'll be the message going in, and args. Cool. And we need the same for the warning. Let's get rid of this eventually. So we need the same thing for the warning. Change this to warn. And we need one more for the error. It's going to be a little bit different, but we'll handle that. And we're just going to, we need to have the source location. I don't care about the source location for the logs and the warnings, because logging is just for information and warning is not entirely an error. But the error, I want to know where that's coming from. So we're going to need the source location, and we'll just call that the location. Location. Cool. Now that we have that, I want to put these into an INL file. So inside here, we're going to add a new item, and we're just going to call it logger.inl. Cool. And in here, we're going to include our logger.h. And right away, we're going to go namespace Scion logger. Cool, we got that in there. So let's just copy all these. Let's see if it'll put it in our INL file. We might just try to do it right in there. So I'm just going to copy these, go here. Cool, those are in there now. Open this. Okay, so before we define what those are, let's build these as well. And that should do into the logger.cpp file for us. That's what I want. Cool. Logger.cpp. And we're just gonna do this again, because that's what I like. There's gotta be a way to get this to do it automatically for us, but take this. All right, so like I said before, the log time is going to be taking a substring of the date that's being sent in. So right away we can initialize that. And we're going to say day is equal to date substring. And the substring is 0 and 3. And then, now when you're getting the date coming back, it's coming back in a certain order, so we're going to be parsing it accordingly. Day number, date, substring, 8 and 2, and then month, four and 3 for month. Go down the next line, let's do the year, and date, substring, 20 and 4, because in the year there's 4 numbers, and then the time is going to be date, substring, and then there are 8. Okay, that's for the log time. And you'll see how that's done in here. So we're going to get the current date time. In order to do that, we're going to need, let's get rid of this for now. So let's go auto time is equal to std chrono. Don't know why it doesn't want to see chrono. Oh yeah. Let's include chrono. Yeah, let's include C time. Okay, so that's std chrono system clock to time t, and that's going to take in std chrono system clock now as our current time point. So we have our time now, and we need a char buff, and we'll just have that to be 30 characters, and we need c time s. And we send in the buff, and then you send in the size t, it's size in bytes, so that's just going to be size of buff, and then we send in our time point, or time t. Okay. And then after we have that, we have our log time. So what this is giving us our buff, our buffer, right? So what it's doing is it's changing giving us the time and putting it into this buffer array. So we can say log time, and right here we can just take that char array and make a string buff. And now we are going to return, we need std, or we need format, so include format, and right here we can go std format, and we're going to go 0. You don't have to put the number in there, I just do. 1, 2, space 3, and that'll take in our log time dot, let's do the year first, log time dot month, log time dot day number. No, we don't need the actual day. Log, unless you want to put that in, it's up to you. Log time.time. Cool. So that's returning that string for us. And get instance is pretty straightforward. It is actually just, we want to have a static local variable of the logger, and we'll just call that instance. And then we just want to return the instance. Now this is guaranteed to only happen one time by the C++ standard. So now that we have this, we can, actually, let's include our logger.ino right here. And I think if we do that, I can take this stuff and put that into here, and that should work still. Good. I forgot one more function we need, and I'm going to call this void init bool console log, and we'll just have that default to true, and bool retain logs. Now if you want, there's more things you can add to the logger if you need it, but we don't really need it, so we'll do that. And we might as well just do this one right now as well. So that's been created for us. Let's quickly go over this. So we're just going to assert that we are not initialized. We don't want to re-initialize. Do not call initialize more than once. And that will be okay if we're in debug, but if we're not in debug, we're going to want to just send a message to the console. So mb, so if we are initialized, we just want to say std cout logger has already been initialized. I can spell. I think. Let me know if I spelled it wrong. And return. We're just going to return from this. We're not going to continue. And then we're just going to say if it hasn't been initialized, we just want to go mb console log is equal to console log. mb retain logs is equal to retain logs. And mb initialized is equal to true. So if we need to add any more initializing stuff, we just add it in here. Cool. So that's good. And we need IOStream, and we'll just put that in here. And then it should automatically be included in our CPP. IOStream. Cool. And we'll check. Yep, we're good. All right. So now let's do our logging. So we're going to need some different colors for these particular error messaging and logging. So we're going to want this to be green, yellow, and red respectively. So let's make a few constants. I'm going to be doing everything in Windows here, so we're just going to include Windows. Windows.h. You can change this if you like, if you're not using Windows, to something that works for you. And we're just going to go const expr word. And word is just a type def for an unsigned short. And we're going to have green is equal to 2. And then red, yellow, white. Red is 4. Yellow I know is 6. And then white is 7. Okay, so we have our colors, and here we want to just put in our assert again to make sure that it has been initialized, mb initialized. And we'll just say the logger must be initialized before it is used. Cool. And we'll do the same thing with an if. So if not mb initialized, std cout. We'll just take this. return. Okay, so we're also going to need string stream. All right, so we can go std string stream ss, and then we'll go ss and Scion, and we'll do info here, colon, space. Let's get the current date time, and then we're going to put a dash in between, and then std v format, and then we would take in our message, and std make format args, std forward our args, and then, all right. Oh, we don't want to do that. And I want to make a new line. Cool. All right, does that make sense? So we're reading this into the string stream, and here we're using the v format from the format library, and we're making format args. So we're forwarding our arguments that we're sending in into here. So now, if we don't want to log it to the console, we're just going to skip that as well. So we just go f md console log, and we're going to need to get a handle to the console, and that's just equal to get std handle std output handle. I want the handle because, oh, this needs to be all capital, sorry. I want the handle because I want to be able to change the color of the console. So set console text attribute, and that's just h console. And then we're just going to be sending in our color, and that's just green. That's what we want for now. And then we're going to go std cout our string stream as a string. Cool. And then we want to set the console color back to white. And if we are retaining the logs, we're going to want to push back into that, or in place back into that vector. Oops. And log entries. Let's get rid of this. And log entries dot in place back. Log entry. Log type. Info. And ss.string. Cool. And we're just going to copy all of this and do the other two because they're basically the same thing. Okay. And we'll just change this to warn. And this is yellow here. The only one that's different is our error. So we can do the same thing with the error. We can just paste it in. Okay. Because it does need to be initialized. And we'll just change this to error. However, before we close off here, we want to forward our args. Let's get rid of this for now. And start a new line. And down here, we'll start the new line. And we'll say func. Put a space in, and then we want location dot function name. Now that's coming from our source location, from the source location library, right here. So that's our source location. And after func, we want what line it's coming from. And we just say line location dot line. And let's just put 2 lines after that. Cool. So console log, same idea. So it's just taking the string stream. We want this to be red now. Leave that as white. And we gotta change this to error. And we actually forgot to change this. By we, I mean me, to warn. All right, so we're basically done, the logger itself. But we want an easy way to call these. So we're actually gonna make some macros. Why do I wanna make a macro? Especially for the error one, because I don't wanna have to keep putting in the location. We want this to be a default. When I do the macro, it'll take in that location by default. So let's go up here and we'll do the log first. And we'll be doing variadic macros as well. So we'll have to define, and we'll just say Scion log, and it'll take in our message and a variable amount of arguments. And it's just Scion logger get instance. First time we call get instance, it will automatically create the static instance for us. And that just takes in X and then VA args. Okay. And we need to do the same thing for warning. Change this to warn. And error. Error is a little bit different because it takes in the current location. So we'll change this here to error. And then right here we need to put in std source location current. So that's the current location that this is being called from. We're also going to need to define the initialize function. So I don't know what I was writing. Not include. We also need to define Scion init logs, and that'll just take in a X and a Y. Well, let's not put X, Y. Let's put log or and retain. Cool. Actually, console and retain. That makes more sense. Console and retain, and then we just go Scion logger get instance and init console retain. Cool. That should work. It should be complete. Let's just try to build. I think we should be able to build fine. Yeah, it built fine. Well, it didn't really take that into account. So let's go here. Let's just try to build our logger by itself. Cool, one build succeeded, it's happy, that's happy. So now, right away, we're gonna need to include our logger as a library in the rest of these. So it doesn't need to be in GLAD, it doesn't need to be in SOAP, because we're not really doing anything with those. But in our rendering, we're gonna need it, and our editor, we're gonna need it. So we'll just do it in our editor right now. So let's go to properties, and in our editor, we can add another VC directory here. So we have our logger, let's go down to the bottom. Cool. And we'll just include our logger. And that'll just be solution dir. Solution dir. Oh, I want to get rid of this too, actually. Cool. Add that in, and then we also want to add that as a reference. So come here, add it as a reference, add in our logger. Okay, so now let's try to build again, just to make sure. Cool, builds fine. And let's go to our main.cpp because we know that's in our editor. So our editor main.cpp. And let's include our logger here at the top. So include logger.h. Okay, so we have our logger. And let's find a place that we're using it. Right here, you could start adding in your stuff here. I want something that's that I can force to fail. Right here, load texture. So let's go here and let's go Scion error, failed to load texture. Whoops, that should be on the outside. Cool. And let's just change this to PNGs because when we know that it's going to fail. And right now, this actually should not work because we never initialized it. So we should actually get an assert. So let's just run this real fast. Perfect, exactly what I wanted to see. So let's go to retry and see what it says. Yeah, so logger must be initialized before it's used. It's not initialized. So let's close this. And go back to main. Right in our main function, at the top, eventually I'll find it. Yeah, so right here, let's just go not STL, Scion init logs, and we'll just do true for now, and run it, and we should get our error with the correct time. Yay! So it's a little bit ugly looking because we're getting this from something else, but this is our error here. So this should have a new line. So inside of our loader, unable to open file, should actually have a new line after it. Yeah, this did not. We can just say inline. I know inline is not really what you want to use. Do we need a flush and all that? But it's good for now. Let's run it again. All right, so see, this is our new error that we got in here. It's saying it's coming from main function and line 225. Let's see if that is correct. Line 225, cool. See, that's working for us. Now let's change this back so it loads. So we know the error works. Now let's check to see if our other logging works. So we got our width and height here. Let's just get our texture width and height. So let's just go Scion log. And then this is what I want. So we got, we'll say loaded texture. And then we say width equals. And now all we have to do is this. And then comma height is equal to 1. Kind of like a C# style. And then we just close that bracket. And then here we just put in our arguments. Our variable amount of arguments that we're putting in, so that's why we use the variag template. And then we put in our arguments, and the arguments are just width and height. That's this width and height here. So after this is loaded, it should give us the width and height, and it should say loaded texture with height, and that should be considered a log. And we'll do the same thing because it has the same signature for warn. So we'll have both just for testing, and run it, see if it works. Wonderful. So everything worked there. It gave us our stuff. We should put equals, make that look clean. But you see how we have our info, we got our time, we have our warn, and then it takes in our numbers. It takes in everything all on its own. And that's all you have to do there. And let's just go equals, make that a bit cleaner looking, just for the test. Awesome. So that worked for us. That's it. That's the logger. Why don't you try doing that, checking it out. And you can change the naming if you like. It's up to you. And in the next episode or the next video, we'll actually start to take out the textures and make our own texture class and texture loader class. All right, I'll see you then. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, if you have any ideas on how I can improve the videos or the content, please let me know. Don't hesitate. I'm always open to learning, and hopefully you're open to learning as well. All right, have a good day.